Uganda has one of the highest population growths in Africa, a population with a growing appetite for modern amenities and services of life. An emerging issue of this mainly youthful population is the increasing demand for public services and works that can adequately meet their modern lifestyles and aspirations. To be able to meet these needs, the government of Uganda has over the years undertaken a lot of efforts and reforms in order to ensure an efficient and effective public sector procurement processes. Before these reforms, public sector procurement was largely a clerical and administrative function owing to the size of the economy at the time. Today, public sector procurement is more complex than that. It is no longer an administrative and clerical function. It is now a strategic and much more complex function, requiring a well-thought-out policy to efficiently address the complexities and huge volumes involved. Government spends trillions of shillings each financial year to execute its mandate of service delivery. This huge amount translates into 70% of government's expenditure and 30% of the nation's gross domestic product. It is for this reason that great care is increasingly needed to manage this process very well and to the satisfaction of all. The first effort to achieve this was the enactment of the Public Procurement and Disposal Act of 2003, which paved the way for the legal framework that currently regulates public sector procurement in the country. The evolution of public sector procurement in Uganda can't be told without first showing where the profession has come from. Public sector procurement has grown from a simple clerical and administrative process which was the norm in the 1960s, 70s and 80s. It began as a centralized process. A statutory body known as the Central Tender Board would procure goods and services for the government as long as they were above $1 million, with the exception of the military and the police.
During the days of Central Purchasing Corporation, Uganda was using one envelope called On Uganda Government Service. What are the advantages in that? Standards, quality, but you also negotiate economies of scale, bulk purchase. You negotiate a good price.
The Central Tender Board worked well for the much smaller population and much lower demands in the 1970s and 80s until the 1990s. Increasingly, complex procurement needs and the promulgation of the 1995 Constitution and attendant decentralization of major government functions justified need for change. Reforms undertaken to make public sector procurement more responsive to current needs in the 1990s led to the Public Procurement and Disposal Act of 2003. The Act decentralized procurement operations in line with the 1995 Constitution. In the place of the Central Tender Board, a Public Procurement and Disposal of Assets Authority was created. Procuring and disposing entities were also established in the various government ministries, departments and agencies.
Public procurement is using government resources, government money, whether it is from government of Uganda, whether it is from development partners. These are government resources. All of us, the Ugandans, the international community, should have access under the non-discriminatory principle to benefit from these government resources. And therefore, we provide oversight to ensure that transparency, accountability, fairness, competition is reflected in public procurement by these procuring and disposing entities.
All government departments and statutory bodies as well as local governments now have their own procuring and disposing units that deal directly with the procurement needs of the departments they serve. They also have contracts committees to approve the decisions.
In procurement, there are fundamental principles that need to be observed. that the law, the procurement law, must be transparent. It must be fair. There must be what we call speedy implementation of projects. That's the ultimate objective. There has to be value for money. There has to be accountability. And so all these will touch the different stakeholders. And therefore, for you to have a proper law, it is ideal that you start with a policy. Because it's in the policy framework that all these issues are actually contained.
The law is there. Implementing that law without the policy has been quite disturbing. It has not been made. It has not been flexible. With the coming in of the policy, at least there's going to be some flexibility, and room to be innovative and creative in managing the procurement processes. Right now, it is a rules bound, and you deviate from it, you are caught up, and so on. It has really been limiting. And we look forward that when the policy comes, most of these gaps are going to be filled up.
Today, due to the increased volumes and sums of money involved, as well as complexities in the procurement of public works, services and goods, the current legal framework alone is not enough. It is the reason why it has become imperative for the formulation of a draft policy on public sector procurement.
Procurement, needless to say, plays a critical role in government and public institutions. We tried the central purchasing. We now are having PPDA and procurement entities in ministries and government agencies, but we are still not happy. We are not satisfied with the performance of the institutions of the system. And the main problem has been a delay in the procurement, and therefore the need to have a policy that will streamline it and ensure that procurement is fast and that is value for money for the people of Uganda.
The National Public Sector Procurement Policy, as it's known, is meant to provide guiding principles for the implementation of the PPDA Act as spelled out by the Cabinet Minute of the year 2000.
Had been a cabinet minute in 2000 saying that the government should develop a procurement policy, and thereafter we should have done the policy and then thereafter the law, so that the policy explains the principles and the principles behind the law. And that's why we thought that we should really develop a policy so that the Ugandans and the public out there know what the role of procurement is, what the intentions of the procurement law is all about, and this is contained in the policy.
Policies show the strategic direction of a given function. So the legal framework are expected to implement the policy intents. Now, in our case, we came up with the law without the intent. So we didn't have a goal to achieve, but we came up with the law. So the question is, what is the law trying to implement? It should have been implementing the policy, which was not prepared, which was not made. So there's been a gap.
The draft policy has been driven by policy gaps pointed out in, among others, reports from the regulator, Auditor General, and international assessments such as the Uganda Public Expenditure and Financial Accountability Assessment of the year 2012 and the Uganda Country Portfolio Performance of 2012. These and other reports continue to show the policy gaps within the current public sector procurement system that need to be addressed. They include, among others, the ambiguity in the roles played by the major stakeholders in the procurement system, the low absorption capacities of procurement and disposal entities (PDEs), which are caused by inadequate procurement capacities and competencies to prepare realistic procurement plans, and too much emphasis on set rules, input control and compliance, and less on efficiency and results, using a one-size-fits-all solutions other than fit-for-purpose solutions.
This policy will help us to procure for special goods. I'm not going to procure for the military the way I procure for NPA, because NPA can wait, the military will not wait. I'm not going to procure for health the way I procure. The other one is life. And now that is one aspect which the policy is going to deal with. Then it's also dealing with what we call collaborative procurement. That together we can achieve better, that we can achieve economies of scale and efficiency.
The Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, responding to these gaps, set up a technical working group which has since prepared the policy on public sector procurement. In addition, several key stakeholders were consulted. They include the Institute of Procurement Professionals of Uganda, the Uganda National Roads Authority, the accountability sector, procurement practitioners, providers, and civil society organizations. The Ministry of Local Government, plus selected local government entities and development partners were also consulted through consultative workshops and written responses.
Sustainability, green procurements, sustainable procurements, how do we manage this? The social aspects of it, do we buy things that injure our communities? Because we're here to serve the public. Now if your procurements are injurious to the public, are we doing the right thing to the country?
Today, the National Public Sector Procurement Policy is seen as very key to carrying the country forward and to realize the Vision 2040 program.
The Ministry of Finance has developed the policy in consultations with other government departments, including Office of the Prime Minister. And the policy has been discussed at Cabinet, and we are now really in the final stages of advancing it and making sure that it's operationalized.
From a planning perspective, procurement is a strategic function if we are to deliver services.
So we are going to work out, and that is also in the Public Finance and Management Act, where it says that an accounting officer should do his procurement plan at the beginning of the financial year. And then based on the funds available to him, then ensure that he concretizes this procurement plan.
Examples of complex projects previously not contemplated but now being increasingly undertaken by the government are many. For instance, the Entebbe Express Highway project and many more that are planned are not straightforward, wholly government-funded projects. A major part of the funding is from a private Chinese firm, with financing from the Exim Bank of China and the rest from the government of Uganda. The Express Highway is a 4-lane road with all the modern amenities, providing a fast, uninterrupted link between Kampala and Entebbe International Airport. The recovery of the cost incurred to build the road will come through users paying road toll fees. This is an example of public-private participation, while the project was acquired through solicitation and not public bidding. Before Kalangala Infrastructure Services came along, provision of basic services and amenities on the island were non-existent. Today, this private company entered an arrangement with the government to provide 24 hours of electricity to the businesses and residents on the island. The power is generated using solar energy. The $2.2 billion 600-megawatt Karuma hydropower dam that straddles the River Nile in Oyam district in northern Uganda. It is the largest hydropower project in Uganda and within the East African community. While these and other huge infrastructure projects have been successfully undertaken, there are others that have lagged or nearly failed due to shortcomings within the public sector procurement legal framework and current processes. A notable example is the Katosi Road project in Mukono district that kicked off before legal wrangles were initiated, halting its progress. The The legal wrangles were preempted because of disputes in the process that led to the award of the contract to what turned up to be a briefcase company. Progress was delayed further by the retendering of the project following a lengthy probe. Today, works have once again resumed for a road that should have been completed long ago and which should have cost much less. Another road that has failed to take off is Kanungu Road in western Uganda. The reason for the unplanned delay are ongoing court cases and disputes over how the contract was awarded. The government already secured the money for its completion and promised the population the project. But work has yet to start. On top of that, interest is accruing. The delays in implementing such projects means added unplanned costs, delays to fulfill government promises, and dents on efforts to achieve value for the money budgeted for the undertaking.
Because of procurement problems, we have delayed implementation. Because of delayed implementation of infrastructure, we have reduction in output. Because prices are going up, the planned costs are the same. Prices are going up because of delayed procurement due to time, and we are getting less output out of the money that was planned.
The experience we have had in public procurement has not been a particularly pleasant one. It has been having all sorts of challenges of delays, roadblocks, cases that take a long time to sort out in procurement, and as a result, this has delayed many projects. Therefore, the need and urgency required to reform the sector and make sure that it is a policy which encourages faster, more transparent, more efficient ways of procurement.
Within the next 30 years, the NRM government has promised to transform Uganda from a peasant to a modern and prosperous society. The key vehicle that will help the achievement